Lately I've been watching a lot of Demon Slayer and I thought to myself, I want to make Inosuke's katana or Nishin blades. He has 2 blades and I want to make both of them as well. But they're pretty easy to make and maybe a bit too boring for a video. That's why I'm gonna challenge myself into making them in 5 hours. Let's pretend the convention is tomorrow. For my pattern I straight up freehanded it since the pattern making is part of my 5 hours. Thankfully it's a pretty easy katana. For this project I'm going to use ultra high density foam, just 1 sheet of 7mm should be enough. I transferred my pattern 4 times to the foam. I will be using 2 of them for 1 sword. Of course foam in itself is floppy as hell, so to reinforce it I'm going to use a fiberglass rod. Since it's a katana, there's a bit of a curve, and also later on I will have to make those gaps in it, so I tilted the rod a bit. I drew the fiberglass rod on my pattern, cut it out and drew it on the foam. This way I'm sure that the slit will be the same on both sides. At this point I started to realize that already one of my 5 hours had passed, so I moved it up a notch. I made my slit in the foam using my Dremel, something I have done 100 times before, and this time it just went a bit different. So when I was done cutting out 4 of these pieces, I noticed that already 1 hour had passed, so I started to panic a bit, and that's why my slit looks like this, because I started to really hurry.
Oh my god, bro. Oh hell no, man. What the?
Not my best Dremel work at all, but the fiber rod fits and the outside is fine, and that's what most important. I glued the 2 sides together using contact cement, apply it to both sides, wait a few minutes and press them together. With the rod in place, my foam was no longer floppy. Next thing for me to do is Dremel in the edges and remove the ugly seams. This will take the longest part. I'm already 1 hour and a half in and I think this will take 2 hours more, so I will have like an hour left to paint, so let's go. So I removed some of the foam using a knife and then I started dremeling the edge. I used it too to remove some unwanted seams. As expected, this took a very long time, especially with 2 blades. So this whole Dremel ordeal took me an hour and a half. Alright, so already 3 hours have passed, I have around 2 hours left and I've spent the last 1 hour and a half dremeling. As you can see, I'm very dusty, but I have 2 pieces of foam that kinda resemble a katana. Of course, in Demon Slayer, Inosuke uses stones to cut out the holes in the sword. I don't think that's possible even with metal, let alone foam, so I'm just gonna use a knife. Now that I have my katana with an edge, it was time to implement those iconic gaps in the blade. I just drew them on randomly since Inosuke used a stone to do this, so you would never have the same gap twice. I also added some small round pieces of foam to the handle, since that's what the original has too. That's pretty much all the detail there is. Normally I would use a filler like Quick Seal for the seams, but I don't have the time anymore, so I'm just skipping this part. The time issue is the same reason I primed the blades using Plastidip instead of Flexbond. Plastidip is less shiny than Flexbond, but it is faster. I gave it 3 layers in total and sped up the drying process using a hairdryer. I have officially started rushing. I just Plastidipped the blades and they are still drying and I have around 58 minutes left. And all I have to do now is still paint them, and for that I'm going to use my airbrush and pray to God that it all goes right, because most of the time the airbrush just always goes wrong. But maybe not this time. So let's get on with it. Personally, I prefer the brushes, since that's what I'm used to. And I know that an airbrush leaves much room for errors, especially when I'm rushing. But overall it went okay. So I have around 30 minutes left and I'm done with the airbrush paint. So what I'm gonna do now is add some Luca spray to make it even more shiny. This turned out to be a bad idea since the airbrush paint wasn't fully dry yet and it gave a weird reaction, but I managed to run along with it. With the painting done, I had around 15 minutes left to add those white wrappings on the handle. This went pretty easy, just applied it with some super glue and spun it around the handle. And with that, the katana was done. I even had 5 minutes left to spare, so I was stressing for no reason at all. Everything I used in this video, except the fabric, you can find at CosplayShop.be. I didn't even use that much, so go check that out. Are they perfect? No, not at all. I didn't take any breaks. I made a lot of mistakes as well. If I would have made them like I normally would, it would have taken me 2 days probably, and not 5 hours in a row without going to the toilet. So even though it's a very simple build, if you are rushing, you just make mistakes. Another reason why I wanted to make this is because in a month we with CosplayShop are airing a new show called Cosplay Arena. What is Cosplay Arena? It's a fun show where 2 cosplayers have to make something against each other and against time. They only have 6 hours to make the whole thing, and the next day even the judges come over and they can win some cool prizes. So you have a whole new set for that. It's pure chaos, but it's also very fun. With all that said, thank you very much for watching. I'm SkyShark and I will see you in the next one.